All right, it's 12:15. Thank you everyone for joining us. And hello, my name is Gina O'Connor, and I'm a grant specialist here at the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. To ask a question, you can utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen or the chat function. And both of those features, you have to physically type in the question, but if you prefer, you can click on the raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you could just verbally ask your question if you prefer. Either of those options are fine. Today, we're excited to be hearing from Dr. Gabrielle Strauss, who is an associate professor in the Human Development and Educational Psychology program here at USD. Dr. Strauss's primary research focuses on optimizing children's learning from various forms of media, including ebooks, apps, and videos, and involved extensive data collection and analysis. Dr. Strauss was the recipient of the 2023 President's Award for Research Excellence for Established Faculty for her substantial contributions to the knowledge, practice, and visibility of USD on both national and international levels. Her presentation today is titled Building Grandparent-Infant Closeness Through Structured and Unstructured Video Chats. And with that, I'll invite Dr. Strauss to get started, and I'll remind her to share her screen with us.
All right. Thanks, Gina.
That is on, you have it on your presenter view right now.
All right.
There we go.
All right. So today I'm going to talk about some data I've collected over the past few years about grandparents connecting with their young grandchildren over video chat. And these are collaborations with the institutions that you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, including Georgetown, Penn State, Lafayette College, Vanderbilt University, and the Lego Foundation. And then AARP funded our group to produce some research summaries based on our work, which you can find on the web under Boomers and Zoomers. And I also provided that link to Gina so she can share it with you as well. So 2 years ago, I gave a brown bag with some early results from this line of research. And today I'm going to go over a little bit very quickly on what we found before and then add what our new study is looking at. So previously we had been looking really at what grandparents and grandchildren did sort of on their own. We were asking them and observing them. And then in our new study, we have given them activities that we've asked them to complete over video chat. And we're looking at kind of how well those activities are working for them. So one of the reasons why we think that video chat is scientifically interesting, in addition to being just really practically important for families, is because of joint attention. So joint attention is a fancy term for when two people focus their attention on the same object or event, and they realize that they're doing that. So for example, in the book, the adult and child are sharing attention on this book, and they probably both know that they're both looking together at this book. They might be talking about what they're looking at on the page. So joint attention is an important way that people pass on information from one to another. It's an important way that people teach and children learn. It's also important for how we build connections. So, for example, even young babies will prefer adults that they have shared joint attention with in the past. Young children will track that and they will remember those experiences and they will feel more comfortable with the people that they previously shared joint attention with. So joint attention is like a foundational way of building connectedness. So knowing that we're sharing joint attention is one important component of it. And when we're together in the same room, we can check each other's faces, we can follow each other's gaze, we can see where someone's looking and look there too. We can follow pointing, we can follow gestures. And when we're on the same side of the screen together, we can do that just like we would if we were sharing a book or a game in the same space. But it all gets a lot more complicated when we're on opposite sides of the screen. So it's a lot harder to tell where someone's looking or pointing, especially if what they're looking at is out of the camera range. So for example, in this picture, the webcam isn't picking up the child's tray of snacks. So if the child were to point down at those, the grandparent might not know what the child is pointing at. Even if those snacks were in view, how would the child be able to tell if then the grandparent was able to look back at those? So grandma's gaze might shift down toward the direction of the snacks, but the child has to understand something about like where the camera is located and how the video is displayed and all of that to really figure out if grandma is actually looking down there. So, you've probably had experiences of children trying to show people things on video chat, and what they're showing isn't really completely in the view of the camera. Hard to tell where people are looking. Another thing about this setup is that when children are really young, adults often use physical cues to direct their attention, like tapping them on the shoulder or like literally putting themselves in front of the child's line of sight to direct their attention. And in this context, the grandparents can't do any of those things to direct the child's attention because they're on the other side of the screen. They lose the opportunity for all of those physical cues. So video chat is more challenging than real interactions for all of these things. Another thing is that we can't hold the same physical object. Like if I have the object, then what you have is an image of that object on the screen. It's in a different spot for you than it is for me. And so we have to understand something about how the video chat's working in order to share attention on it. If I think I know where it is for you, I can tell maybe that you're looking at the screen, but I can't tell what part of the screen you're looking at. So I don't really know. So, for example, you could be in a Zoom meeting and have, messages popping up along the side, and maybe no one would be able to tell. So in previous work done by some of my collaborators, parents that were surveyed, 2/3 of them said their children engaged in video chat for less than 5 minutes. Half of them reported their child ran away. So if your child is not that well engaged in video chat, you are not alone. So with all of these hurdles in place, we were wondering how effective is video chat for building and maintaining family relationships? And the first thing we did, this was in the summer of 2020, was to survey families with children ages 0 to 5. We surveyed both grandparents and parents. And then this is a quick snapshot of those results, which I had presented last time 2 years ago in my brown bag. So what predicted feelings of closeness and enjoyment? So first was that the frequency of video chat. That was the best predictor of grandparents' ratings of closeness to their grandchild. This was above and beyond all other things that we controlled for, like how far apart they lived, whether they had met in person. Again, this is the summer of 2020, so maybe slightly different context than now. Second, the greater variety of video chat activities that they engaged in, the closer the grandparents reported feeling. And then that also predicted grandparent and parent enjoyment of the video chats. Grandparents and parents overwhelmingly enjoyed the video chats. Grandparents who lived the furthest away enjoyed them the most. And then finally, when grandparents perceived social barriers like the parent or child was disinterested or they felt like they were interrupting them, then the grandparents felt less close and enjoyed the video chats less. Parent perceptions of the family relationship were also important. When parents perceived their own and their child feeling closer to grandparents, then they enjoyed the video chats more. And we also wanted to know, well, do the grandparents feel recognized? So we asked parents and grandparents to report whether or not they felt like the child recognized the grandparent. And we used cluster analysis to cluster the families based on the types of activities that they reported doing in their video chats. And we found that recognition was higher when the child was older. And then also when the pair had met in person. Those sort of makes a lot of logical sense. In addition, families who video chatted more frequently and those that were in our high involvement cluster were more likely to report recognition. And the high involvement cluster was a cluster where the parent and the grandparent both engaged in a large variety of activities during the video chat. The group with the lowest recognition was the grandparent-led group, and that group was a group where the grandparent reported doing a variety of activities, but the parent wasn't really engaged. And so, like, for example, you can see in this photo, the parent has placed that child in a high chair, and then we don't actually see the parent there participating in this interaction. So this suggests that the parent involvement is important also for relationship building, not just leaving it up to the grandparent and the grandchild to make those interactions work. So then we invited 50 of the families from that survey that had children born during 2020 to send us video recordings of some of their video chats over the next 6 to 9 months. And so those recordings were collected in the very end of 2020 and in 2021. So the oldest kids were approaching about 2 years old by the end of data collection. And then first, just a count here of positive and disengaged behaviors, just to show you about how often kids were crying, turning away, crawling away. That was happening about 4 times per recording that they gave us. And grandparent activities, playing with toys, singing songs, reading books, those were happening about 12 times. So overall positive interactions, but we were still seeing quite a bit of disengagement on the part of the children. And we went through those videos and we coded for signs of infant happiness. So we coded their facial expressions, their like giggling, positive vocalizations. And we looked to see what best predicted infant happiness. So I have a few clips to share with you. You can think about what here is tying all of these clips together in predicting happy babies. So maybe.
Harper. Hi. Oh, that's a big yawn. Yes. Hi. Hi. A hanger, a blue hanger. What you gonna do with it? He's gonna toddle around with a hanger. The desk. Are you showing me the desk? There's a lot of things on that desk. I see a cup.
Putting up shelves.
All right, last one. Oh, sorry. Start that over at the beginning.
Yes. Hi. Hi.
Here, Gracie. So that kid runs away, but they're happily doing so. So the thing that tied these all together was grandparent sensitivity. So in all of these videos, the grandparent is taking cues from the grandchild, really responding to what the grandchild is doing in a very warm and engaged way. And we found that was the best predictor of infant happiness, was really the responsiveness of the grandchild on the screen in reacting to the grandchild. We also see that the parent plays an important role in some of these, as the parent is like moving the camera as the child is walking, like especially in the hanger video, the child is walking and the parent is moving the camera so that the grandparent can continue that warm and responsive engagement with the child as the child is moving around the environment. So from these video chats that were just the families doing what they would normally do, what we learned was that frequent video chats that included a variety of activities predicted grandparent enjoyment of video chats and their feelings of closeness to the grandchild. Those positive family relationships, like the grandparent not feeling like they were interrupting, also helped. Video chats that included high levels of active participation from both the parent and grandparent were associated with greater feelings of recognition than when grandparents just led and the parents stepped back. And then finally, the children were the happiest in the video chats when the grandparents were the most sensitive and responsive to them. And then I just have to share this video clip with you as an example of families sharing important milestones together, and because you can't possibly watch this video without smiling.
Show her what you were working on last night. What doing? You cutting the grass? What you doing? Show her what you're working on. Come on. Come on. And look what I can do. What? Oh my God.
I think that really highlights also one of the themes that we saw throughout our different variations on our study, which was that grandparents really enjoy these. Okay, so the current study, now we're structuring the video chats. We're asking families to do certain things to see how those work for the families. So we're in year 2 of a 3-year grant. And so far we have 71 grandparent, parent, grandchild triads with a child between the ages of 18 months and 5 years old. Our goal for this grant is to get about 150. So we're just a little under halfway there. We have right now about 20 to 30 triads in each of 3 conditions. So when they are randomly assigned to one of 3 groups. So either the structured play group, where we give them 3 different types of play activities to do, structured reading, where we give them 3 different types of reading activities to do, or unstructured is kind of our control group, where we don't give them assigned activities, we just have them do what they would normally do. During the study, the families we give them a Zoom link and they record their video chats on their own at their own times. We don't join those. It just automatically goes to the cloud so we can have the recordings. At the end of the Zoom meeting, it's set to pop up a short survey where they can tell us about how much they enjoyed the video chat and a few other things about it. And then I'll also, just for the purposes of today, they complete a few pre and post surveys, but the one I'm going to talk about is at the beginning of the study, they also answer some questions about how comfortable they feel with technology. So in the play condition, there are 3 different activities we ask them to do. One of them is on-screen drawing. So they use the whiteboard feature in Zoom to draw together. And the goal of that condition is to have an activity that is focused on the screen. The grandparent and the grandchild are both looking at the screen. In the show and tell activity, the grandparent is asked to bring objects or whatever to the screen, or they could take the camera around and show the child things in their house. This grandparent has brought a candle and a birthday hat to the screen to show the child. The goal in that one is to get them to try to share attention in the grandparent's environment. And then in the imitation condition, we ask activity, we ask the parent and the grandparent to both find objects around the house that they both have, and bring those to the session so that they can play together with imitating with the same things. So in this case, a bowl and a piece of fruit, and they can, maybe they'll both put the bowl on the head and as a hat, or they'll both pretend to eat the fruit. And in that case, there's the possibility of sharing attention in both the child's environment and the grandparent's environment. In the reading condition, we have parallel activities. So in the on-screen book, they screen share a PDF of the book. That's the attention to the screen. And the grandparent has a book condition. The grandparent just has a physical copy of the book and they're holding it up. So the child would be paying attention to the book in the grandparent's environment. And I actually like this little screen grab here because it goes to show that adults also don't sometimes know what is visible to the camera and how to orient the camera so that the other person can optimally see. And then finally, both have books, that matching books condition. You can't see very well, but the child is leaning on a copy of the book. We actually mail the grandparent and the grandchild both a copy so that they each have a copy and the child can follow along in their own copy as the grandparent is reading. And so there again, there's the opportunity for them to share attention in both environments. So results right now, preliminary results right now, I'm going to focus on enjoyment because that is information coming out of the surveys that they're completing as they go. And we will eventually be doing detailed coding of the videos to get a better picture of enjoyment and also other things like how attention is shifting. But for now, with our survey ratings of enjoyment, what we're seeing is that grandparents overall are enjoying the sessions more than the parent or the child. Grandparents, a lot of them are ceiling like 100 all of the time. The greatest gap there is in the control condition. That's the unstructured condition. So the lack of structure seems to the structure seems to benefit the parent and child engagement more so than the grandparent. And this is parent ratings of the child's enjoyment. So at this point, it's just the survey ratings. Favorite activities from the grandparent, they liked all of the reading activities. They rated all those all quite high. And then sort of runner up was the drawing activity. Grandparents' lowest ratings were for the show and tell and imitation activities. But I will note that those were still averaging in like the mid 80s, so they still enjoyed them quite a bit. And if I had to guess here, I would guess that these activities were more challenging for grandparents because they had to be more creative in coming up with the content of what they were going to do. The parent and child favorite was the matching books condition where they both had a copy of the book. For parents, everything else that was structured was about the same. Unstructured was lowest. They did seem to appreciate having planned activities for the sessions. For children, the pattern was almost exactly the same, except they were also low on that imitation with the household objects. I'm not exactly sure at this point why that is the case, but I'm hoping that through some coding we can figure out sort of was it working really well for some families and not as well for others, and what were the families doing that where it was working well, because then that might help us provide suggestions to families that are more struggling with that. And then I mentioned that we had them rate comfort with technology. So for parents, the parent ratings predicted greater parent and child enjoyment if the parents felt more comfortable with technology. This was especially true during the activity types that required greater parental involvement. So the matching books and matching objects, and then the two on-screen, the on-screen drawing and the on-screen, the shared screen book. Those were places where the association between parents' comfort with technology and their enjoyment were the strongest. For grandparents, we did not see a relation between comfort and enjoyment. And again, grandparents were like kind of at ceiling on enjoyment, just kind of enjoying it no matter what. So if they felt less comfortable with technology, it seems like that they weren't going to let that spoil their fun. So in summary, we found that grandparents enjoy the video chats kind of regardless of their comfort with it, regardless of the activities. Parents and children are a little bit harder to win over all of the time consistently. They do still enjoy the video chats a lot, but there's more variability. And the structured activities, especially the matching books, seem to work well for them in supporting their enjoyment. And then just to tie in from the prior research, the variety of activities, an engaged parent, and a warm, sensitive grandparent are associated with those feelings of connectedness and recognition in addition to enjoyment. And then last, I just want to share some practical tips and resources with you. So communicating about how to be supportive can help enhance the child's ability to communicate. Like we saw that parent kind of following the child around with the camera. You might hear talk between the grandparent and the parent, like what is the child doing? What are they going to get? Where are they running off to? Those kind of things can help support the interaction. I would say be flexible and responsive. So follow the child's lead. Their interest, their engagement can vary from one session to the next. They might kind of just be done for today, stop, try again another time, just kind of following their cues. That's the sensitivity piece. And then be creative. So you can bring objects to the camera, you can bring books, activities, you can share snacks, show and tell. It might work well to plan some of those things in advance so that you can have similar objects in both places to be able to read together, for example. You can also adapt games like peekaboo, imitation, scavenger hunts, all of these things, singing together, singing with hand actions, we see a lot. And also maybe just making the best of things that happen. So like if your child goes off the video, then maybe it becomes like a game of peekaboo and you ask, where did they go? To sort of adapt to the video chat environment. On my last slide here, then I have a few resources I've sent the links to Gina so she can send them out when the copy of the recording goes out to everyone. And now I am happy to spend some time taking questions.
you recall the moment where you had the inspiration for the study? Was it entirely precipitated by COVID, or were you thinking about it prior to that?
Oh, interesting. So we actually were planning to do the reading condition manipulation pre-COVID. We were planning to do it. Actually, we're going to go out to childcares and have a researcher, set up with a child and then have someone on campus connect to them. Um, so we were thinking a little bit about this, like where is attention shared? How does where it's shared matter? We were thinking about that pre-COVID, but really the grandparenting aspect of it came in during COVID. Like one of my collaborators said, you know what would be really interesting to study is families that never had a chance to meet the grandbaby, and how would the grandparents build relationships with that new grandbaby that was born during COVID that they'd never met before. So that was really one of the seeds that started this intergenerational line of research.
Okay. Just a reminder to our audience, here's a Q&A. Here's a question. I understand pediatricians recommend limiting screen time for children, especially very young children. So how do those recommendations apply to interactions like this where relatives are interacting with kids in video chat?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So um, I think that you'll find that pediatricians tend to come down on screen time guidelines a little bit with a little bit more strictness than those of us from like more of a psychology standpoint tend to. But I think that even pediatricians often make allowances for video chat as before children are doing things like watching videos on screens or playing video games. Earlier than that, they would say video chat is okay. I think that from my perspective, those early interactions that are heavily supported by adults are beneficial to kids. And really getting the opportunities to build those family relationships, I think outweighs the potential negatives of screen time.
Are there any plans to follow up with these children at a later date to ask them how these video chats improve their relationship? Because I was just thinking back to my own upbringing. We didn't have video chat, obviously, and I had grandparents that lived far away, and I just wonder how things would have been different if video chat would have been a thing.
Um, so right now in our study, we're following them. Yeah, only for, I would say to get through the video chats, they're taking between 2 and 4 months, and we don't have a planned follow-up, but I think that's a really good idea. Is to be able to give them a few years to get a little bit older and then really be able to express how important and meaningful it is.
Right. And just a reminder to our audience, you can use the chat Q&A or raise your hand. Here is another question we have in the chat. What is your sense of how video affects social recognition memory versus in-person interaction?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting question. So one of the things that we tried to do was with the families, the early COVID families, is that we also had them turn in a video of their first in-person meeting. We were hoping it would be their first ever, but it really was just basically the first during the study, and most of them had met like once or twice before. Because we were interested in that idea of like, can we see evidence that they are recognizing from the video, and would that impact their in-person interaction? And we just found that those interactions were like so overwhelmingly variable, that we couldn't see any impact of the video chat in them. Some just what happened in those interactions, who was in the interactions, all of it was just too variable. But it's something that I would like to follow up on in future studies. We do know that there is an experimental study out there where children who met someone and interacted with them on video chat, then later when they met them in person, they did recognize them. That was, I want to say those were maybe like 18-month-olds. And then there is actually also a video paradigm, a video chat paradigm of the strange situation, where they find that young children do find comfort in a parent that appears on video chat. But I think that there's still a lot of open questions there. Time separation. Oh, I'm not sure. I think that they interacted over a period of like maybe 10 days or something, and then they came in for a visit to the lab on campus at the end of it. I'm maybe a day or two, probably since their last chat.
Okay. Yeah, the next question says, has there been any research into larger group video chats, like a situation where aunts and uncles or more extended family were on the same video call, and how that affects interaction?
Yeah, so we did actually get a lot of those in our sample because we didn't say like only these people can be on the video chats. So we did sometimes get other family members coming in. Because we didn't have consent, we didn't do any detailed coding from those other individuals, but we did count them. And we looked at the impact on that and like the interactions. And I think there's still a lot of open questions there because I think that the family members that are on the same side of the screen as the child can be potential like almost distractions from the video chat. Whereas if there are more people over on the other side of the video chat, that might be better for drawing attention to the screen.
Were you able to come up with recommendations as a result of this study? Like, do you recommend that grandparents interact at least once a week with their grandchild over video chat, or more or less often?
I mean, we did see the frequency of video chats predicting, feelings of connectedness, but I don't think that we have like sort of a hard cutoff line on that. As opposed like a recommendation for how frequent it is. I think it probably greatly depends on the context of what's going on outside of the video chats, how frequently they're seeing each other in person.
Right.
So yeah, my recommendations are more about like being responsive during the video chats, kind of following the child's lead and not worrying if the child is not interested or running away, because it's totally normal. Just try it again another day.
It is, yes. And I imagine there's quite a few long-term benefits for the grandparents who engage in video chats.
The grandparents really seem to really like it. I think in one of the AARP publications, I think that I think you put the link in the chat. Yeah, the first one. There's a page where we have a bunch of quotes from the grandparents about how much it means to them and how much it helps them. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I would
what
imagine.
they're also interested in measuring is those grandparent feelings of connectedness to see which types of activities best support connectedness feelings.
Right. All right. If there are no other questions, I want to thank our speaker, Dr. Strauss, today. Thank you so much for your time in putting this presentation together and for speaking with us. And thank everyone else for attending. I do want to remind everyone that our next presentation in this series is March 26th. The speaker is Dr. Coral Dirks from Communication Sciences and Disorders. So please remember to register so that the presentation appears on your calendar, and I will put the link to register in the chat as well. Thank you again for joining us everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.